Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister addressed countrymen as his family, Mere Parivarjano, setting the agenda for the politics of the coming months right up to the forthcoming Lok Sabha elections in early 2024. Dynasty versus the Prime Minister's family. How is it going to pan out? There was a lot in the speech that created headlines and a lot more which created the points of discussion. We will come to all of that. But before that, let me introduce our guest for the evening. We have here with me Nistula Hebbar, political editor in The Hindu, well-known author as well as analyst, has been observing, watching Indian politics for a long time. She's joining Media Scan for after a pretty long gap. Welcome back, Nistula.
Thank you, Smita, for the lovely introduction. And yes, it has been a long time since I came back to your program.
And also with us, Aditi Tandon, another well-known journalist of long standing. She represents the Tribune and has been an observer, a Congress watcher for a pretty long time. You have been listening to her on Media Scan on earlier episodes. Welcome back, Aditi.
Thank you, Smita.
And social scientist, academic, well-known political commentator Badri Narayan. So kind of you to join us back, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you, Smita. Thank you.
And before we start talking about what the Prime Minister spoke and why that speech is so politically significant at this point of time, let us just listen in to how the Prime Minister tried to conclude his long address, which went on for about 90 minutes, and why this almost last bite of the speech managed to make the biggest headlines and still continues to hit the headlines.
अगली बार 15 अगस्त को इसी लाल किले से मैं आपको देश की उपलब्धियां, आपके सामर्थ्य, आपके संकल्प, उसमें हुई प्रगति, उसकी जो सफलता है, उसके गौरवगान, उससे भी अधिक आत्मविश्वास के सामने आपके सामने मैं प्रस्तुत करूंगा.
And may I come to Badri Narayan first? Mr. Badri Narayan, I'm happy to remind our viewers and those who are watching this program that you were perhaps the first person to write even before the Prime Minister made this iconic speech earlier last week, telling us that Narendra Modi is one politician who has, provided a new political lexicon for observers like us. Because unlike other political people who tend to focus on the current and what has been going on, Narendra Modi's speeches, his addresses are usually focused on what? He plans his vision for the country, for the people of the country in the next many years, perhaps even decades. So coming back to what you wrote even before this speech and in the light of this recent address of the Prime Minister, what do you think, in your experience, is going to be the response of the electorate? Are they going to welcome this vision of a politician having a plan for the country, not for the next election, but for the next many decades? In this case, particularly 2047, when the country would have completed a century of its independence. Mr. Badri Narayan.
Thank you, Smita, for observing following my pieces and relating with the political events. Actually, we as political analysts observing since many years that Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi, the speechcraft contains present and also future, planning of the present and the vision of the future. And the future he put as a goal and also as a motivation, as creating hope for the future, inspire people to work hard to achieve goal. So this is a well-planned speechcraft, a strategy of PM Narendra Modi to mobilize people for larger goal of the nation and also larger goal of the politics. And you can say electoral politics too, because even electoral politics you need to encourage people to be mobilized on certain issues, and politicians always try to evolve their narrative strategy. And as I said in my Indian Express piece one week ago, that Narendra Modi is the only politician in the India, only one politician. I think only I am saying emphasizing it while I'm analyzing the history of the political reasoning of the India, who brought future as a political resource to mobilize people or inspire people.
Fine, fine. Allow me to bring in our other guests into the discussion, sir, and then I'll come back to you. Nistula Heber, Narendra Modi, is he the only politician, as claimed by Badri Narayan, who tries to bring in, a vision for the future whenever he addresses the people of the country? And in your experience or your understanding, rather, what would you say when a politician tends to give a vision for the next 20, 30 years? How is it expected to reflect in the, the voting pattern of the people or even the short-term goals? Because after all, the BJP is a political party and Narendra Modi needs to lead his party to victory before we come to the next decades.
So, Smita, there are two ways of looking at what Prime Minister Modi has said. There were a lot of things that, a lot of decisions that he took, some which were taken in a good way, which a lot of his economic interventions, etc., or the social engineering and the welfare programs, etc., were done.
Yes.
Some are not taken in such a good way either. But there was always a feeling that his government tried to give out, which is that with a majority like this, if the Prime Minister does not take the bold decisions that he has taken, then who will? Because coalition governments are inherently, they are pulled and pushed. There are too many pulls and pushes. So therefore, the idea is that the Prime Minister, with his full majority, has the mandate of the people to take decisive decisions. That is something that he always talks about. And therefore, he says, if I won't do it now, then who will do it? Because this is an opportunity given to him twice by the people of India. So therefore, he does talk about a vision. He talks about what's going to happen in, say, 25 years from now or even 100 years from now. There are things that he's putting into the foundation for a leapfrog in terms of economic growth, etc. So that is how he talks about, and that reflects his consciousness about the nature of the mandate that he's been given by the people. That this is it. We have given you the full mandate. There is nobody who can stop you in terms of political parties, coalition partners, any kind of coalition dharma. Please go ahead. We endorse your program. Please just go ahead. Number two is also, I would say, a more pragmatic or a more election-oriented thing, where he said very, very clearly, and I would also relate it back to the response, the speech that he gave in response to the motion of no confidence just a few days before his address from the Red Fort, where also he said that, in 2018, the opposition brought a no confidence vote motion against me, but I came back with a bigger mandate. You people, meaning the opposition, haven't come back with any better views. So I'm expecting that in 2028, you will come back with more preparation to move a motion of no confidence against me. So
yes.
Obviously, the idea is that he was going to be repeated as Prime Minister. That is I would call that, in, say, a defense army parlance, an area domination exercise, because just before the parliament session, Smita, we did see the setting up of the India group of opposition bloc, and they did cooperate to a large extent in this parliament session. The BJP also got 38 parties together for the NDA, and these are the battle lines for the next general election. And
yes,
Prime Minister
and
Modi
I
made a
think
very strong statement both in Parliament and in the Red Fort that he will be back. This was like an area domination exercise.
Yes, and if, the confidence exuded by him at the Red Fort, we can actually, as you said, look at it two ways. It does have a, futuristic view to it, that there is a politician who is looking at where the country ought to be in the next 2-3 decades. But at the same time, the reflection of that confidence can also be shown in the short term when we come to elections in various states later this year, and then, of course, the next Lok Sabha election mentioned by the Prime Minister himself. But, you were talking of there were various schemes and programs and economic welfare issues, which also the Prime Minister went into in much detail. So one of the new, and I think this could be a big ticket program in the next few years down the line, was the Vishwakarma Yojana, and also what he liked to call the Lakhpati Didi, that is giving some money in the pockets of our girls and women, you know, to make them self-sufficient in certain needs. But at the same time, if we look at the social or even, you know, from a caste perspective, the Vishwakarma Yojana, which is meant for people who are into building and construction, the artisans, the workers, the allied activities related to all, you know, all work which is done by hands and which includes a kind of a skilled and semi-skilled labor. So on the Vishwakarma Yojana, what is it exactly that the Prime Minister is aiming to achieve? Let us listen into the Prime Minister first, and then I'll have to ask Aditi on this.
जो परंपरागत कौशल्य से रहने वाले लोग, जो औजार से और अपने हाथ से काम करने वाला वर्ग है, ज्यादातर ओबीसी समुदाय से, हमारे सुथार हो, हमारे सोनार हो, हमारे राजमिस्त्री हो, हमारे कपड़े धोने वाले काम करने वाले लोग हो, हमारे बाल काटने वाले भाई बहन परिवार हो, ऐसे लोगों को एक नई ताकत देने के लिए हम आने वाले महीने में विश्वकर्मा योजना लॉन्च करेंगे.
Aditi Tandon, Nistula was just referring to the opposition bloc, how they have, you know, started to come together, and they might very well in Mumbai or in their later meetings have a common agenda to challenge Narendra Modi. And one very common refrain that comes from them is empowerment of those, you know, the deprived sections of society. There is a caste census which is still underway in Bihar. They are talking of much more in terms of plans. Then there is the Samajwadi Party, the DMK, etc. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi himself keeps talking of the deprived segments. Now this very interesting scheme, the Vishwakarma Yojana that the Prime Minister has announced and which will be launched shortly, we are already seeing it in some manner being implemented as done in the cabinet meeting earlier this week. How do you think this is going to pose a challenge to the opposition bloc? Are they prepared to contest with this? Has it taken them by surprise? What is your understanding?
You see, Nistula, this program that has been approved by the cabinet yesterday is really part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's broad political objective and slogan, Vanchito ko Varaita. So, you know, the marginalized have to be given priority in governance. So this is actually one of the building blocks in the larger foundation that the government has been trying to lay for the underprivileged sections. We all know, Smita, that Vishwakarmas mainly comprise the scheduled caste segment, the scheduled tribe segment. There are a number of women, there are a number of OBCs, and even among the OBCs, there is the, you know, the Pasmanda Muslim segment, which is really very dominant as far as the artisans with hands and tool workers are concerned. So as you know that the Pasmanda Muslim segment is 85% of the Muslim population of the country. So
Correct.
It is massive in terms of political outreach of the government, with the Prime Minister openly in several political speeches talking about bringing the, you know, traditionally deprived OBCs into the mainstream, and where he has specifically mentioned Muslims several times, and he has mentioned a number of other segments also. Plus, you know, you see the beneficiary class that the BJP has created as a massive voting bloc. It has actually delivered results for the BJP in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. Now,
however, Aditi, this OBC bloc, whether it is, you know, as castes which are considered to be slightly more empowered among the ABC segments, and those which are usually referred to as lower OBCs or, you know, most backward classes, including those in the Muslim population. Now, I think the fight is going to be on this segment, you know, for the next big elections that we are already getting sort of the atmosphere is being built up. Because on the one hand, there is this Labharti politics of the BJP, which believes in giving benefits to the poor, after which they will, you know, sort of associate themselves with the party or the government. Whereas parties in the opposition like the RJD, the JDU, the DMK, the Samajwadi Party, the NCP, they are also targeting the same segment of the population. So how do you think it will play out? What is in their minds?
No, you see, this is a deliverable scheme. Yesterday, it has been stated very clearly that 30 lakh families will be covered over a period of 5 years. 30 lakh means what, Smita? 30 lakh means 30 into 5. So you're actually talking about a vast segment of people that will be targeted in a specific way. Already, you know, the economic package has been rolled out. 13,000 crore has been set aside for the scheme. In the very first year, there is a target to reach around 6 lakh families. So you see, whereas the opposition is also targeting this segment, the opposition starts from a disadvantageous position because they are only in a position to make promises for the next general election. Whereas the BJP, being the ruling party, has quickly thought on its feet, brought out a smart program to actually bring this class of people into the burgeoning middle class of the country. You see, middle class in itself is a huge voting bloc. What is the
Fine.
economics behind the Vishwakarma scheme? Economics is to bring these people into the middle class, give them purchasing power, and ultimately power the economy of the country.
Fine, fine. I think I'll take a take on this from Badri Narayan surely. Mr. Badri Narayan, I think you are one of those commentators who has written perhaps the most, you know, on the other backward classes segment of the society, particularly from the Hindi heartland. In your view, sir, what Aditi has just flagged, on the one hand is the RJD, the JDU, the Samajwadi Party, the NCP, in the south, the DMK, and such other parties who are part of the opposition bloc. They talk of social empowerment, you know, the social empowerment and the sort of a political positioning of the other backward classes segments, whereas Narendra Modi's politics, or BJP as we say, is more focused on giving them economic benefits and sort of, you know, bringing them into the aspirational class of the country so that they are able to become empowered middle class voters. So surely they are both targeting the same segment of the population, but in their own different way. How do you think this will play out in the coming days in the state elections as well as the general elections? And secondly, the Prime Minister's politics of particularly mentioning the Pasmanda in his address, whereas we used to see a lot of mention of minorities in previous speeches of earlier Prime Ministers. Bringing the Pasmanda Biradari particularly into his address certainly has a certain message, does it?
Yeah, Smita, I think you are right in what earlier panelists have said. You know, there is a fight is going on between two paradigms to approaching OBCs. One is through identity, consciousness, which RJD and other caste, the parties who are doing caste politics, they are trying to mobilize them on caste lines. And the Vanchit as a caste identity, composed by various caste identity. And on the other hand, BJP is trying to address the marginality through the angle of economic, this vertical and horizontal way. And in this way, they are trying to expand this, re-emphasize the category of the poor, not caste, economic mobilization of the caste, various castes as poor, not as a caste identity, Dalit, this caste or that caste. And this poor is a class term which was earlier used by the Marxists. Now it is picked up by the BJP politics in reinvented way. They have reinvented the new meaning in it. And Labharti is in that way, is extending the meaning of poor and bringing
okay, sir,
them.
If you allow me, I will ask you a very direct and straight question. Do you think the Pasmandas will sort of gravitate towards the BJP after the current stress on them?
Yes, that I am explaining that this is the way to provide them capacity to aspire, because the main thing is in this community they don't have capacity to aspire for a better life. And Pasmanda here, as they are approaching Pasmanda not as a Muslim or not as a Muslim community or religious community, but as a poor community. And so this extension of the category of the poor goes to even Muslims, even Christians, and this Labharti thing is approaching everyone. It is beyond caste, beyond community, beyond religious. So it's in one way it's a class term, and which try to include various kinds of minorities, various kinds of religious identity, and the caste. So it's a paradigmatic fight to
so basically, if I gather you correctly, sir,
construct the identity politics and trying to bring it in a new way. of the politics of development.
Fine, fine. So if I gather you correctly, you are saying the Prime Minister's aim seems to be, to sort of leave the religious divide, somewhere along the margins and bring in the social aspirations and the social empowerment, the economic empowerment of the people to the fore, which might also pay very good dividends electorally, but it is also a sort of a vision, for a more harmonious society perhaps. But, I see there's so much left from the Prime Minister's speech that we could discuss among ourselves today. But since I have very little time left, I will quickly bring in one issue which did not figure so prominently in his earlier speeches, but was very, very clear in this speech earlier this week. Let's listen in.
तीसरी बुराई तुष्टीकरण की है। ये तुष्टीकरण में भी देश के मूलभूत चिंतन को, देश के सर्व समावेशक हमारे राष्ट्रीय चरित्र को दाग लगा दिए हैं।
Nistula, you also might have noticed, like we all have done, the Prime Minister has been, stressing a lot on the cultural rejuvenation of our religious sites and, making the country, more comfortable in its own past and trying to decolonize the Indian mind. But I think he never mentioned Tushtikaran, appeasement, as such a slogan for the future in the political manner, the way he addressed in his Red Fort speech. Why do you think, along with corruption and dynasty, he had to bring in appeasement at such a prominent level? And do you think it means we are going to see more of this in the coming days?
Well, Smita, even before the Prime Minister's address, if you recall, on 8th August, there was a Quit India campaign that was launched by Prime Minister Modi, where he said, corruption quit India, nepotism quit India, and appeasement quit India, because he seems to have identified these three things which he has spoken about in his political rallies, but certainly not from the Red Fort as a national aim, where he feels that these are actually perversions, where you are trying to divide people by seeming concessions to a particular community without actually empowering them, and basically alienating one community from the other because one is getting appeased and the other is not. So he has basically framed it saying that these are three evils, these are perversions, one needs to look them in the eye and recognize them for what they are and deal with them as a country to build a national character. That is what he said at the Red Fort. This is something that the BJP has been wrestling for a while, and his government has been wrestling for a while, because a lot of international organizations, routinely keep talking about freedom of religion and issues like that. And therefore, he wants to basically point out that, in fact, even before this, a lot of data had been put out that even though Muslims are like 12% of the Indian population, in the PM Awas Yojana, for instance, they are more than 31% of beneficiaries. So in terms of beneficiaries of welfare programs, etc., there has been no discrimination, and therefore these kind of campaigns against his government are not well founded, in fact, etc. So this is something that he really feels strongly about. He does not want the image of India and his government to be hit by parties which do count on minority support. And
right. So on that, I'm afraid I'll have to cut you short, because I want a very quick take, Aditi, just in 2 lines. On the one hand is the Prime Minister's thrust on welfare of the Pasmanda Biradris and his attack on appeasement, no less than the Red Fort speech. On the other hand is the opposition bloc, which has been trying to, buttonhole the government and the BJP on the question of communalism and social harmony, etc. Let me ask you a futuristic question, because we are so much on the future. How is the opposition bloc, the Congress and its allies, how are they going to contest the Prime Minister's thrust on appeasement and the welfare of Pasmandas?
Well, the opposition is still figuring out its response, because you see the biggest attack Prime Minister and also JP Nadda, BJP National President, has made on the opposition is taking a cue from Rahul Gandhi's recent statement that Muslim League is a secular party. We just had the Vibhashan Vibhishika Smriti Divas, where all BJP leaders said what kind of secular party could Muslim League be, because Muslim League leader Jinnah was responsible for the partition of the country. And as you know, Prime Minister has repeatedly attacked the Congress, saying that the Congress has a history of dismembering the nation. He said it in his no confidence motion reply, where he said that India, Pakistan, and later on Bangladesh was created out of one larger mass of land, a larger mass of people who are culturally and civilizationally bound together by centuries. So you see, the opposition is really finding it hard to find a credible, logical narrative against this appeasement attack, because it is coming from all over the place. The entire Partition Horrors Remembrance Day, there was a concerted attack from the entire ruling party on the Congress party. And even, the first Prime Minister, Pandit Nehru, was questioned for the decision that was taken to divide in India. It was said that 12 people in one room took this decision, and 10 lakh people were murdered, and 1.5 crore people were displaced. So that's a major blot on Indian history. Opposition will have to find a strong counter to that.
Yes. So I think very clearly put, Aditi, and that brings us to the end of this conversation. As I said, there was a lot more that we could have discussed, but we've tried our best to, sort of pack in as much as we could into this quick conversation. Thank you so much, Aditi Tandon. You've joined us at such a short notice. We'll surely call you again. Also, thanks to Nistula Heber for joining us after a long time and sharing all that insight on the Prime Minister's speech, as well as, the current political scenario. And finally, I want to thank Badri Narayan, always so gracious to join us whenever we have requested him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Viewers, our guest was just telling us that the opposition still seems to be groping where to find an answer or a credible language to counter the address of the Prime Minister, not to speak of some of the mutual confrontations that are coming out in the headlines just ahead of the opposition bloc's big meeting scheduled in Mumbai. But meanwhile, we will be seeing the launch of the Vishwakarma Yojana early next month. Surely a lot seems to be in the pipeline, and that will frame the political language for the coming elections, not only in the states, but finally the Lok Sabha in 2024. But till then, it's a wind up on Media Scan for this evening. Namaskar.